And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, and I'm Director of WEIU. My co-host is Annalicia Haynes.
Hi, everyone.
And we're going to talk about veterans today and police matters and veterans, whatever we want to talk about with veterans and stuff. So we have two guests today, Mr. Nathan Grissom, if I can talk, a veteran, and he also worked here at Eastern for a while. Now he works for IDOT. Welcome, Nathan.
Welcome.
And James Williams, familiar to some of our Eastern Illinois people, a recent retiree from the Eastern Illinois Police Department. Welcome, James.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you both. Thanks for coming in. James walked in just before the show started, so we're gonna wing this one, as they say, a little bit. But I wanted to start with Nathan because Nathan contacted me probably a month or so ago and said, "Hey, I'd like to do a story about some veterans because I think their stories need to be told." And I wanted you just to have the floor to get us going and talk about some of the people that you wanted to be here today, if possible.
Yeah, there was a veteran by the name of Raymond Piercy who passed away 2-3 weeks ago that wanted to be on the show with us. And he kind of wanted to get his...
Pull that mic in just a little bit too.
He kind of wanted to get his story out there.
Yeah.
He was a Korean War vet, had went through quite a few different battles and stuff, from my understanding. And then he came home and he was used as a prop, I guess, for a nuclear test. They put him out in a crater and they set off a nuclear bomb. And was classified for some 20 years or so. And wasn't able to get any VA benefits out of it. And he basically just wanted to get his story out there and have grievance about it, I guess.
It's terrible that he passed away just a couple of weeks ago. And he was going to be here. So
yeah, he's excited about being here.
So I'm sorry we missed that. You also had an uncle. I think it was a neat story. He rode his bike through Italy a little bit. Was that?
Yeah, they were giving bikes to basically hopscotch in front of the Germans. And that didn't really turn out so well. They rode into an ambush, basically.
Wow. Any other people that you want to talk about? As we set up this show, that you want to get the word out on?
My grandpa was in World War II. Was hit with a grenade. I think 3 people out of his battalion were not injured.
Wow.
Throughout the battle and stuff, he was left for dead and picked up later and survived until 82, I think.
And I think that's one of the things that people don't realize about veterans are these stories that they have. Because you see stories that do make it, I guess, for lack of better terms, the stories that you see like in movies or documentaries even. But there's other stories, like hidden stories, that you don't hear every day. And we spoke offhand just a little bit on how it's difficult for veterans to share those stories just because of the impact that it had on their lives. I mean, I can't imagine being in a situation like that, much less being, having to put your life on the line to save other people. And it's fascinating when you hear these stories, or when veterans do come forward and they want to share these stories, even after years. I mean, you hear stories coming up from surviving World War II veterans all the time. And this past June was the 75th anniversary of D-Day, so I think this is an appropriate time.
I have another uncle that was, I don't know anything about what he did per se, but I was told that he was a guard at the Nuremberg trials and didn't tell anybody anything about what he did. He refused to tell anybody.
See, and that's
and all the history that was lost.
Right, and as a journalist, we want to get those. Well, maybe it's just me. I would love to get those stories.
And it's all about whether or not they want to tell them. James, do you have a military background? I'm sorry, I've known you for being a police officer here on campus. I don't know if you have a military background or not. So.
Yes, sir, I do. Okay. My story is a little bit different. It's pretty classic, though. My father was a Marine in the Vietnam War. Was wounded twice in Vietnam in combat. That right there motivated me more than anything, I think, to get involved in the military. Coming up, I always wanted to try and help people. I always wanted to be involved with helping the community, helping people individually. And for me, the Marines was a perfect outlet, perfect opportunity to start that journey.
Now, how long were you in the Marines?
I was a reserve, but I was in the reserve for 6 years, and I deployed Operation Desert Storm during 1991 Gulf War.
Okay, and you were in the military. What led you to enlist? Something like James, or a different?
It is more kind of family lineage, and then also school is a way to pay for school.
Okay, what led you, Nate, to really be so passionate about getting some veteran stories out and to talk about today's show and things like that? What led you to think that?
I'm a member of the FW in Greenup. I'm junior vice commander down there, and just hearing different stories from the guys talking and stuff. They'll tell stories to other veterans that they won't tell to the normal public or even family members. And just hearing those stories and then seeing different history shows. I like watching history documentaries. And
Same.
that stuff's being lost.
Yep.
It's just Raymond's a perfect example. He passed away right before he could get here.
So we would be remiss if we didn't ask if you have stories you want to share. Neither of you have to do this, but it would be. Emily said, and we would not be doing our job if we didn't say. Is there anything from your deployment that you want to talk about? It can be the good, the bad, the ugly. Any story. So we'll let James go first, then Nathan, if you don't mind.
The Gulf War at that time was a lot different, a lot less involved than the one that's currently going on and has been going on for the last 20 some odd years. Our war was, what they called the quote unquote video game war. It was short, it was brutal, it was, and it was wrapped up, almost textbook, if you can use those terms in combat. But it was a very short war. My deployment was short. I was fortunate enough to where the unit that I was in, we were pretty much restricted to some security details. We did some base security. We did some patrols at night, night patrols around bases, things like that. But before the ground war kicked off, actually I think it was the day before the ground war kicked off, the Iraqis surrendered. So that's as far as involved as my combat guide at that time. But it's still, you're 16, you're 22 years old, you're 6,000 miles away from home, you're in the middle of the desert. You got these, Iraqi Republican guards and whoever else out there wanting to do bad things to you, and so you got a lot of stress going on. You got a lot of different factors influencing you at that time. But we were there to do our job. We were there to do a mission. We accomplished it at that time. I'm proud of that time. I'm proud of that service, and it just led me into law enforcement because I wanted to continue helping people, continue giving back to the community, and law enforcement was the next viable option for me.
And you've got more story to tell here in a little bit about some of your experiences recently, and we'll get back to you. Nathan, go ahead if you feel comfortable.
We were told at least that we were the first operational MP company into Baghdad in 2003. We weren't with the actual invasion, but we were on the tail end of it. There were still places being secured and stuff when we got there. Our very first mission that we did was the Abu Ghraib prison. We're looking for, I think it's Matt Spriker, if I'm saying that correctly or not, but as a pilot from the Gulf War, they'd had some writing on the wall and stuff in one of the prison bays that they'd found. They thought maybe his body was there. So we went there to do some security and stuff for that. Turned out he wasn't there, obviously, but at the time, we were told that we couldn't have any rounds loaded in our weapons. We were in a combat zone, mind you.
Really?
So at the time, we pull in all.
I know nothing about anything, but that seems wrong.
That's not unusual, though.
Oh, really?
No, from what I hear, yeah.
All right, go ahead.
But up to that point, before we got to the city that's outside the prison, everybody is welcoming us, the cheering and everything. We pull up to the village, and everybody's just standing in the road, not moving, staring dead at us. You hear everybody in the vehicle same time, their weapons charged. It's just this eerie, something's not good. We get to the prison, there's shots being popped off and stuff, but we did a little bit of everything while we were there. We started all the police stations up. We did VIP escorts. We did the training. The Iraqi police started all that. We adopted a lot of the schools and got them all rebuilt. We got people back home to send us school supplies, and we gave them to the students. We did a lot of security around the schools because they started doing kidnapping for ransom, especially the girls. We had colleges too, and the boys would go in the afternoon and the girls would go in the mornings. So about noon, when they'd get out, we tried to do some patrols around the area because about daily for a while they were grabbing people.
Wow. What advice would you give young people who are considering enlisting right now in the U.S. military? Both of you can answer.
For me personally, I think it's something that is probably underrated, military service, and I say that in the sense that I think it would do a lot of our kids a lot of good. For me, it was probably the turning point in my life that I can point to, that I could say, that's the time I became a man, because it forced me to start not taking things for granted. It forced me to appreciate life a little bit more. It forced me to basically to become disciplined and grow up. So I think it's something that if somebody is young and lost and don't really have any direction in life, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I'd echo that too. It's a good place to learn when you're lost, I guess you could say.
That's a good answer. I like that. Things in your mind, Annalisa.
So I know we talked about the importance of veterans sharing stories like this. So, but what are some things that people need to keep in mind when they talk to veterans? You know, do you have people? I mean, it's different when there's
It's
a little
kind of
kid,
not to say what
right?
you
It's
say.
different when there's a little kid who's like, oh my God, did you shoot a bad guy? Like, because you know how to handle a little kid. But when it comes to adults, you know, how should people approach veterans? I guess, for lack of better terms, because I know everyone's different. Does that make sense? I hope that's not an insensitive question either.
I'm sorry, Nate. It makes perfect sense because the classic first question is, "Did you ever kill anybody?" You know, that kind of thing. And 90% of veterans don't. That's not something that they want to revisit. That's not something they want to discuss. So that's probably the first. And a lot of people do it in jest. You know, they're not really putting a lot of.
And that's not funny to
It's
you
not
guys,
funny.
I'm assuming. 'Cause they-
No,
yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Especially people who have been severely traumatized by combat, which is something else that is probably underrated in veterans. Is post-traumatic stress disorder. So I think that is probably the top one as far as I'm concerned, anyway. And I'm sure a lot of veterans would echo that.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to get at, but I can't speak for
Daddy,
veterans.
I
But
mean, what James said.
Everybody is different about it, but from my perspective, like you go to county fairs and stuff, and they always have a veteran stand up. I don't know if it's that personally don't like the attention, but I hate doing that. I personally refuse to stand up for that stuff. It's not because I don't appreciate what they're doing. It's just I don't want people looking at you. I don't want the attention of it.
And you were a little nervous about coming on the show, to be honest, right? You
Yeah.
really wanted James or some of your other buddies to be here to help you. And I know it's been tough for you. And I appreciate you coming on today because we didn't know for sure if James was going to make it. We wouldn't have had the show. So I know this isn't easy for you. So, and maybe in a way it'll help maybe somewhere down the road, I hope.
And also to echo kind of what he was saying, if you go up to somebody and you ask them a question about the military and they start telling you that they killed these people or whatever, they weren't there, they didn't do anything. Because if you don't know
I
them,
heard that.
they're not going to tell you a story.
my dad was the same
Interesting.
way. No, that's the thing. So, because I know I mentioned to you that my dad was in the military, but he never talked about any of that, and neither did any of his friends that he would bring around. But I wonder why that is. You know, is it because people want this glory?
There's a lot of people that are support elements of the military. And I'm not saying that they never go out and actually are on patrols or out in danger and stuff, but they're more localized on bases, and they want the glory.
Okay.
And
See,
my perspective, I don't.
No, right.
I'm glad you said that because I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Can you
know-
talk a little bit about James's story? Because it's
Yeah,
a really interesting story, and we're glad you're here. You know, you're now a motivational speaker because of some of the stuff that's happened
Yes.
to you. Do you mind sharing some of your
Yeah.
recent history, James Williams?
Yeah, sure, not at all. I got the fortune to work with Nate, working with the University Police Department. Like I said, I kind of came out of the military hungry for more of an effort to try and continue to help the community. So that got me into law enforcement. That brought me, long short of it, to Eastern Illinois University. So I was blessed with a 25 plus year career at Eastern. I just recently retired, actually, July 1st. Thank you.
Counting right years.
But no, during that time, I've had some hardships, a lot of different hardships, under different circumstances, different types of hardships. But I think probably the one that stands out most is some health issues that I had to deal with. Coming about 2007, I had an undiagnosed heart condition that I had to try and continue to work through. I did that for a long time and kind of struggled a little bit, kind of did the best I could to make things work. But I had some fantastic doctors and staff that helped me get through it, helped me continue to try and remain healthy up until about 2014, in which my condition continued to decline to the point where they told me I had to have a heart transplant. So in May of 2000, I lose track now. Dave, years starting to run together. You're there. I'm getting old. But no, I had to have a heart transplant in 2015. 17, goodness. So anyway, I had to have a heart transplant, and luckily I was blessed. The the surgery went very well. Prior to that, I had 4 previous heart surgeries. So 4 previous heart surgeries leading up to the heart transplant. I was off work for 2.5 years. Nobody expected me to recover well enough and get healthy enough to be able to come back and resume my career. But God blessed, God willing, I was able to do that. So I returned back to work in August of 2017. And was able to finish out my career and go out on my own 2 feet, so to speak. So I was pretty fortunate about that. My recovery went so well that the doctors and hospitals have reached out to me on numerous occasions to try and bring the message out to people who are also going through heart conditions and heart treatments. So I go to hospitals and I speak to patients who are in various stages of heart treatment. I also go out and I'm a motivational speaker for some of those people, just basically giving them some inspirational stories and giving them a message of hope and how to continue to fight through hardships and adversities and try to continue to be successful. And I draw upon my personal story to deliver that message, and that's been pretty successful also. So far, I've been featured on Barnes-Jewish Hospital's website, Carl Hospital's website. I've traveled out to California and spoke out there for St. Jude's Medical. So it's been a blessing again. So I'm just trying to get back to some of those people and take my own personal stories and share and try to, pass that message on to people, inspire them.
When you're talking to those folks, or maybe even one-on-one, do you have a go-to, I don't want to say line, but a go-to kind of story or just a paragraph there that kind of tells them that they're to keep hope alive? Is there something you reach into?
Sure. The way I try to here's something I usually try to draw upon when I deliver the message, because a lot of times people don't understand what you had to go through. So what I like to try and do to try and make a mental image for people is I say, listen, when I was at my sickest point, I want you to try and envision yourself. I want you to think of yourself running as long as and as hard as you can until you're exhausted, spinning around in circles until you're completely dizzy. Give yourself just a little bit of touch of flu so you have some nausea, and then have somebody sit on your chest while you try to breathe. And that's how I felt most of the time, all the time. Okay, so that kind of gives you a visual image of what I had to deal with on a daily basis until they gave me the heart transplant. And then it was just like night and day. I didn't realize how sick I was until I started feeling good again. But my classic line that I like to deliver is, you never really truly learn to live life until you almost die. And for me, that's probably something that I think a lot of people can use to try and draw on, to try and appreciate life a little bit more, appreciate relationships a little bit more, appreciate friendships a little bit more.
It's hard to not very many words.
What am I doing with my life is what I want to know.
And we're griping about the air conditioning now.
Yeah.
Oh man, how often do each of you talk to your military buddies or cohorts that you were deployed with and went through boot camp and all the stuff with?
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because I got out of 1991 is when I got back from Desert Storm. And I have guys from my unit who still will text me or call me from time to time and check on me, or vice versa. We'll plan to get together every now and then just to have some dinner. A lot of the guys luckily are kind of within driving distance, so it's 2 or 3 hours drive for some of the guys. But we'll try to get together in Indiana or Champaign or wherever, just to kind of get together and have some lunch or dinner or something and swap some stories. So that's to me is one of the most rewarding parts of my military service, is that relationship, that brotherhood that never goes away. So it's something that I cherish. So I'm glad to have that opportunity.
We were a Guardian based out of Springfield, so a lot of the people are fairly close in social media and stuff. We talk quite a bit on that, and then there's a couple of people here local.
Boot camp, is it as bad as the movies make it?
Yes.
I have to ask. Any boot camp stories that you can share?
Well, for me, I was in Parris Island, South Carolina. So it was, you're talking, okay, so, and this is the best way to relate it. So most people have seen
Full Metal Jacket.
Full
right?
Metal Jacket.
That's what I
There
think
you
of
go.
boot camp, right?
Right, that's what everybody thinks of boot camp. Okay, so that right there was my training battalion and company in boot camp. 3rd Battalion India Company was the company that I was in boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. So so those squad bays that's what those were filmed in, those were my stomping grounds back at that time.
Okay.
Ours was night and day difference between Army and Marine basic, but we had the open bays like he's talking about the whole time. We were military police, so we were held to a higher standard than what the rest of the military is, because we could be pulling over a general and dealing with domestics or whatever if you're on post. So we had kind of day one throughout most of basic training and AIT and everything. So it was a little.
Where did you go for basic?
Fort Leonard Wood. Fort
So the
Lawson
beginning
Wood.
of Full Metal Jacket,
where my
there
brother
is some truth
graduated
based
from.
in that.
There's a lot of truth to that. In fact, I got a little bit of flashback when he was going when old Gunny's going off in the squad bays. I was like, whoa, wow, boy, that brought back some memories.
Because that movie is really 2 different movies into one. It's about the basic. Have you seen it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I've seen like every war movie.
But I mean, it's just awesome. I mean, the rest of the movie I don't think is near as good as the boot camp part. But
Sure.
talking to you guys, I wanted to see if you guys agreed, because I mean, it'd bring back those crazy memories.
Yeah, definitely. Arlie Ermy, he's a classic Marine Corps drill instructor.
And
And that happened
it's
by
rated R
chance
for you
too,
folks.
because
Yeah.
he was training the person that was supposed to be the gunny, and they're like, you know what, forget it, we're gonna put you in and you're gonna act. And he's like, I wasn't acting. That's just how I was.
Yeah, they are. Drill
So-
sergeants are some of the funniest people. When you get them out away from what they're supposed to be doing and they relax, they're very funny.
I'm trying to think back if it was in the first Iraqi war or maybe or the second one, but there was a journalist interviewed one of the people over there. Remember, they said, well, we need this kind of equipment, we're not getting it.
Yes.
Was there stuff that you guys needed over
Absolutely.
there besides bullets that you wish you would have had?
Absolutely.
And why is that not more of a thing? I mean, that drives me nuts as an American.
And we trained the basic training with up armored Humvees. We went over with 91, or the Gulf War soft skin Humvees. We had the flak jackets instead of the new interceptor vests that had the plates. Some of us had the newer ones, but we didn't have plates for them. We were there from April until June without that. I think the last couple of months we were there, we'd swapped out with another unit to get some up armors. And the very first patrol they went out on, they got hit with an IED, and it saved the guy's name is Rich Carroll. He's from Mattoon. It saved his life.
What about you back in? You were one of the earlier ones, so was there stuff you needed?
For me, it was we had some issues with camouflage utilities. A lot of the uniforms at the time were more woodland based, so we had a hard time getting a hold of desert camos.
Same here.
And then I remember some issues with what was it? We had some. They were real freaked out about chemical weapons, chemical attacks, that type of thing. So there were some shortages with some of the counter agents and things for that type of stuff. But I think mostly we did pretty good with what we had. The military is, I mean, they're notorious for sending you out to do a job with half the stuff you need. But we got some pretty resilient guys, and we always kind of managed to make do.
We couldn't get tires for our vehicles for the longest time. Couldn't get parts unless we had them, or a vehicle would break down and they'd strip it. We went without.
I know all these
for a while.
stories. Yeah.
She's over here laughing. I was hoping you weren't going to be able to answer this question the way you did, but
We lived on the Tigris River. We found a pot and basically like a propane heater, and we were down to starting to boil water before they finally got us some more water in.
Yeah,
was that'd be my next question. Did you at least get enough food, or were you ever worried about whether you were going to have enough
Or
food?
better yet, describe the food you have to eat.
What about the food, just in general?
Oh my gosh, I was in ROTC in high school, and they made us do, those little training sessions, right? And they're like, okay, go make one of these. Have you ever seen the MRE?
MRE?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Have you ever made one?
I've never made one, no.
Go ahead and explain
guys
it.
like this to protect guys like me.
Go ahead. Explain how to make it.
Well, MREs, I'm sure we had guys that, at my time, I don't know how it is now, but at my time you had about 6 basic MREs, so you had about 6 basic meals that you could get from day to day, and we had guys that we call MRE gourmets, because they would get to a point where they'd start taking some of the MREs and they kind of interchange them and kind of mix them up, kind of make making up their own little stuff and coming up with little things just to kind of change the taste a little bit. But most of it, a lot of it was just add a little water and mix it up, shake it up. Space food if you want to call it that. But some of the stuff, I'll give them credit. It was either that or I was just hungry. But some of it wasn't too bad.
Either that or
Yeah, we had nothing but MREs for quite a while, and there's no breakfast MREs. There's no, it's what you have. That's it. And we finally started getting some. It wasn't really cooked food. It was more like a large MRE that's for the whole company, but it was like spaghetti, and we had the same meal for probably a month, but it started out like once a week and then twice a week and then every day, but it was the exact same meal. It's kind of like the episode of MASH where they're complaining about the same food every day. But then once we started getting food, by the end it was actually really good food.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left here. We're talking to James Williams and Nathan Grissom, both veterans. Anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to get the word out about in terms of any veterans, needs, affairs, or whatever? Just leave a little time for you.
We kind of talked before we came on the show. Everybody's concerned with like the VA and the veterans benefits and stuff. In my experience, the VA, the medical side of it's not been that bad of an experience for me personally. I know there's people out there that have had horrible experiences, but like the benefits side of the VA, I personally was medically discharged from the military, and it took me 8 years to get a service connection for that what I was discharged for. It's still, my experience is taking years for guys to get anything connected that are rightly, it's not like a BS claim, it's a real deal. And I think Congress needs to focus on that more than the medical right now.
Okay. James, anything from your point of view?
No, I think we covered a lot of the issues. I mean, you're never going to cover all of them, but I'm glad that Nate reached out to you about this. It's I think Coast County has a wealth of stories like this out there. A lot of veterans out there who kind of fly under the radar a little bit. But for me, I think the mental aspect of it for the veterans returning, as far as readjusting to normal life, dealing with combat-related illness, combat-related trauma, those issues are important to me. And then, of course, making sure that veterans get the medical care that they, deserve.
Okay. Minute left. Let's talk about some just fun stuff. Favorite military movie down the line?
Oh, wow. There's a bunch of good ones. Probably Full Metal Jacket and maybe Last Samurai. How about that?
Okay.
Black Hawk Down.
Oh, that's very difficult.
Platoon for me. It's easy.
Well, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
I'll say Pearl Harbor because I love World War II stuff.
There you go.
Just do.
Summer vacation. You going to go anywhere this summer, anybody?
I'd like to hit some islands, not the Dominican.
Yeah. Thank you. We want to keep you.
Going to Texas this fall.
All right.
I'm broke, so I mean.
I just go to sporting events for my kids. So we're out of time, but I think I speak for Annalisa and everybody here at WEIU. First of all, thank you for your service. Thanks for coming in and contacting me, Nate. I do mean it. James, it's great to see you.
You too.
I'm glad everything worked out well. And
Thanks,
you working there at EIU so much. We're proud of you. So thank you too very much. And everybody, please have a great day out there.
Appreciate it.